Sirens in the dark, a mansion on a hill, whispers of agents at the door. What the FBI found inside Rick Harrison's home would shock you, unless it never happened. The camera floats up a quiet Las Vegas street, past tan stucco and tidy desert rock, toward a gate that looks like it keeps stories on the inside. You can hear it already, the knock that launches 1,000 thumbnails. Federal agents. Search warrant. Inside the mansion, a discovery so big it would undo years of easy banter across a pawn counter. A breath is held, a latch lifts, and a nation leans in. Freeze the frame. Turn down the soundtrack. Because the most shocking thing in this story does not live in a safe room or a hidden drawer. It lives in the silence you never hear online. There was no FBI raid at Rick Harrison's mansion. No dawn lineup of jackets with yellow letters. No agents threading his hallway with evidence boxes. No courtroom, no cuffs, no case. What the Bureau found behind that door is simple. It found nothing because it never went inside. If you came for a perp walk, you came to the wrong movie. But if you came for a real story, you are in the right seat. This is not a tale about contraband in a celebrity vault. This is a tale about how a modern hoax gets built, why it sticks to familiar faces, and what actually lives behind the gates of a life you think you know from television. It is also a reminder that the truth is rarely clicky and often worth your patience. The rumor did not creep in with a whisper. It kicked the door at breakfast. A grainy courtroom still. A narrator with a voice that sounds official, but belongs to no one you can name. A headline dressed in the heaviest words the internet can sling. Shocking. Discovery. FBI. Life in prison. No dates. No case numbers. No local reports. Just the rhythm of borrowed authority, pounding like a drum, hoping you will not ask what song is actually playing. Here is how that rhythm gets made. Someone opens an editing program and lays a handful of images in a line. A courthouse hallway from a different city, evidence boxes from an unrelated story 3 years old. A photo of Rick smiling on a convention floor. If the hoaxer is ambitious, they ask a text-to-image tool to conjure an orange jumpsuit, a somber corridor, and a badge with just enough detail to fool a fast scroll. Over the images, a script recorded in a closet borrows the cadence of news without any of its obligations. Confirmed, the voice says, with nothing behind it that could confirm anything. Federal agents, the voice says, and those syllables borrow the gravity of a real bureau to prop up a story that never touches a real file. The trick would die here if the world were slower, but the world is fast and starved for drama. A friend posts the clip with one word, "Wow." A stranger shares it with a sentence that begins, "I knew something was off." Someone else asks why no mainstream outlet is covering this, as if silence were evidence of conspiracy and not evidence of absence. The algorithm smells engagement and carries the clip to tens of thousands of people who once watched Pawn Stars and might react again. In an hour, the rumor is not a lonely thumbnail, it is a chorus. The chorus sounds like certainty. Certainty makes more clicks. The factory starts over with the same script and a new title. There is a way to walk past the crowd. You do not need a law degree, you need 3 questions and 10 minutes. Who is the source? If a clip will not name one, it is not a report. When did this happen? If there is no date, you are being asked to hold bait designed to drift forever. Where did it happen? If there is no address, no jurisdiction, and no mirror from a local newsroom, the claim is trying to live everywhere and nowhere at once. Real federal work leaves paper. Affidavits, warrants, receipts for seized property, filings, and press statements with signatures. If none can be found, you are standing in fog. Step out of the fog and into a place that exists. The gold and silver pawn shop is the opposite of a rumor. Fluorescent light. Foot traffic. A bell at the door that rings 100 tiny stories into the room. Tourists crane for a glimpse. Locals lean on the counter with quiet urgency. The negotiations you watched for years on television take their real length here. A coin meets a magnet, a loop, and a book. A guitar finds a calloused hand and a memory. A signature gets compared to the known, not the hoped for. Television is a highlight reel. A shop is a day. When the flagship series hit pause, the internet tried to turn programming into prosecution. But shows end or go on break. Contracts breathe. Formats rest and retool. The people who built something before TV keep building it after TV. Rick Harrison's public life looks like this now. Less camera, more projects he can control. A podcast microphone. Live appearances. Business work you cannot montage. The rumor machine has no patience for that because it cannot monetize the ordinary. The ordinary pays the bills anyway. The truth is not a good thumbnail, it is a good home. Now, the mansion you were promised. If you have watched Rick argue over documentation, condition, and story for a living, you know his idea of treasure starts with meaning. Inside a house like his, you expect books. You expect documents in sleeves. You expect a shelf of oddities too personal to consign. You expect guitars because a life around history often keeps company with sound. You might expect historic firearms displayed legally and secured, not as trophies of lawlessness, but as the inventory of a collector who understands both value and regulation. Above all, you expect the untelevised comforts of any private home where a public life rests. Sofas that remember long days. A kitchen that smells like Sunday a dog asleep in the only patch of sun that matters. If there had been a raid, the city would know. Federal actions have choreography. They arrive with warrants signed by judges and case agents who can answer a question with a document. They partner with local offices who know the streets. They leave with receipts for everything they take. In a city like Las Vegas, microphones sprout within hours. Photographs surface. Neighbors remember jackets and car doors. Reporters file pieces with specifics you can read twice and quote. None of that happened. That is not mysterious. That is reality asserting itself against a loud fiction. It matters to push back because hoaxes leave dents even when they miss. Fans worry and spread the worry. Staff spend time telling strangers that fake accounts are not real. A week of garbage, uploads, pushes legitimate updates lower in search. There are costs you do not see in thumbnails. They live in inboxes and awkward conversations at gas pumps. If you care about the people you watch, the most generous thing you can do is slow the rumor down. Wait for the basics. Ask for receipts. Reward the creators who bring you those receipts even when patience costs them views. There is another reason, more selfish and more important. The habit you use to fact-check this story will serve you everywhere. At work, it will help you ask better questions and wait for better answers. With friends, it will teach you to be careful with each other's names. Online, it will teach you to reward people who treat your attention as a gift instead of a vein. They can mine. A feed built on those choices feels different. It is slower and calmer. It is also kinder. So why Rick? Because his silhouette is useful to hoaxers, familiar enough to be specific, distant enough to be hypothetical. The word mansion is useful too. It invites you to imagine secrets because the house is big enough to hold them. And those three letters, FBI, are useful because they borrow the authority of real work and real law. In a thumbnail, this is perfect. In life, it is fraudulent. Trade scandal for craft, and you will keep the thrill without paying the lie. Discovery lives in honest rooms. In a back office, when someone opens an old ledger and recognizes a signature for what it is. In a shop, when a tired instrument sings because a patient hand coaxed it back. In a pawn negotiation, when an heirloom meets documentation that sends a shock of joy through a Tuesday afternoon. Those shocks are smaller than a federal raid and bigger than any lie that tries to replace them. Let us tell the other story, the rumor smothered. A father and a kid stand in the museum near the back wall. The kid stares at a car he has only seen on screen and forgets to hold his phone up. The father watches his face and understands why people build. A staffer tells a story because he is asked. He also lets silence do the rest because not every moment needs commentary to grow. In that room, truth moves at the speed of a heart, realizing it has found a new thing to love. There is a quiet scene in a private kitchen that you will never see. It is ordinary and therefore valuable. A man puts a mug on a counter and flips through a notebook, not a script. A list, calls to return, a shipment to check, a plan for the evening that involves music because there are two fuels in his life, and the second one is sound. The rumor steals mornings. The list gives them back. Inside the shop, the counter keeps teaching. A customer brings a coin with a story. The story is rich, the coin is not. That is a gentle conversation. Even when the person really needs the money, another customer brings a guitar with provenance that holds up. Another says priceless and learns that priceless is not a number. The lesson keeps repeating, value depends on proof. It depends on context. It depends on time. The internet's favorite word is shocking. The counter's favorite word is show me. If you want your own kit for the next time this headline shape appears, write it where you will see it. If a video will not name a source, it is not news. If a claim does not include a date, it is not an update. If a story has no place, it is a plot device. If someone messages you as a famous person asking for money, it is a fake. Shops do not run their books in direct message. Real operations use real channels with names you can check. And if you want a single sentence to keep in your pocket, let it be this. The less a video tells you in the first 20 seconds, the less it has to tell. Real reporting leads with facts. Hoaxes lead with suspense, then repeat themselves until you have watched long enough for them to be paid. You do not owe that business model your minutes. What the FBI found in Rick Harrison's mansion is nothing at all, because the FBI never walked through the door. That is the discovery that matters. Not because it lets us feel superior to people who clicked, but because it returns your attention to you. It reminds you that the loudest story is rarely the truest, and that you can choose what to feed with your time. Start in the workshop where hoaxes are made. It is not quite a newsroom, not quite a studio, and not quite a bedroom with a laptop on a stack of paperbacks. It borrows pieces from all three. On the desk sit 3 folders. One holds stock photos of courtrooms and hallways that look serious, even when they have nothing to do with your subject. One holds old stills from a show you loved, grabbed from press kits and convention floors. The last folder is empty, ready to accept whatever an image generator can invent. In a few seconds. The hoaxer does not need facts. The hoaxer needs a good mood. The file names tell the story. The image generator makes a badge just sharp enough to convince a hurried eye and a corridor just blurry enough to hide mistakes. The hoaxer layers them into a timeline and drops in the voice. The voice is borrowed authority. It speaks like a press conference and says nothing that could be sworn to. It prefers passive phrases. It has been reported. Sources confirm. Shocking discovery. Federal agents. All the gravity words without any actual weight attached. Then the script begins to stall. You can hear the stalling if you listen for it. The narrator repeats the premise, then repeats it again, then says the title out loud as if saying the words twice makes them more true. This is not an accident. The hoax depends on delay. It needs you to keep watching until the midpoint, where an ad will pay for the counterfeit. The hoax cannot deliver details because details would reveal that nothing happened. So it loops mood and music and manufactures certainty. A single paragraph is the fig leaf. Down in the description, a sentence says the video blends factual, rumored, and fictional elements. That sentence exists to be pointed at later. If anyone complains, it is a confession that I hope you will never read. And if you do read it, it hopes you will accept entertainment purposes as a pardon. Real reporting does not require such tricks. Real reporting begins with the 5 basics and names them clearly: who, what, when, where, and why. Hoaxes borrow the vocabulary of the news without the obligations of the craft. Now step into the moment where the hoax leaves the shop and hits the street. The first shares matter most. A page that has been collecting likes for months posts the clip with a caption that sounds like a friend whispering at the back of the theater. "I cannot believe this." Another page copies the same post an hour later with a few words changed. "This is wild." A third puts a countdown emoji above the same video to suggest urgency. Suddenly, your feed is a hall of mirrors. If you are not careful, you mistake repetition for corroboration. A few minutes later, the comments begin to write the story the hoax could not. Someone said, "I heard sirens on that street once." Someone else says, "I always thought there was something off." A third uses the phrase "cover up" because it matches the mood they have borrowed from movies. The algorithm now sees heat and sends the clip wider. First to anyone who has ever watched the show, then to anyone who has ever watched content about celebrity scandals, then to anyone who has ever slowed down on a post with the word "shocking" in it. Within an hour, the hoax is everywhere. You can dismantle it in 10 minutes if you carry the right tools. Tool 1 is the name test. If there are no names on screen besides the subject, no byline, no editor, no outlet that would be held to account for errors, you are not looking at a report. Tool 2 is the date test. If there is no specific date, you are not looking at the news. You are holding bait that can be recycled forever. Tool 3 is the place test. If there is no address and no jurisdiction, you are holding a floating story that tries to live everywhere and nowhere at once. Tool 4 is the paper habit. Real federal work signs its name on documents you can request, or at least see referenced. Warrants, affidavits, receipts for seized property, public filings. If none can be found, you are in fog. Tool 5 is the local mirror. Major law enforcement activity does not hide in a city like Las Vegas. If no local station, paper, or reporter can corroborate the claim, it is a script, not an event. There is also the 20-second rule. The less a clip tells you in the first 20 seconds, the less it has to tell. Real updates lead with facts, because facts are the point. Hoaxes lead with suspense, because time is the point. If the first 20 seconds are music, mood, and headline repeated in a tone of gravity, you have already learned enough to move on. You owe your attention to rooms that respect it. This might feel abstract until you watch the same trick pointed at a name you do not love or a topic that does not interest you. Then the pattern becomes obvious. The thumbnail uses the same 3 words. The voice uses the same cadence. The stalling begins at the same marks. The clones appear in the same order. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That is the victory. Your attention returns to you, and the factory that feeds on nerves loses a little of its fuel. Put down the toolkit for a minute and walk with me, because the whole point of clearing away nonsense is to make room for the rooms that exist. The day outside a rumor is brighter and steadier than the day inside one. If you park behind the gold and silver pawn shop before the doors open, you can watch a kind of choreography that has nothing to do with drama and everything to do with competence. The lights hum awake. The displays are checked for dust and fingerprints. The day's list is balanced against the staff on the floor. Someone checks the phone messages and sorts them by urgency. It is not thrilling, and it is the engine that keeps the sign lit. The first customers are often quiet. A man with a box of coins and a story about his grandfather that he wants to be true. The box tells a different story, and the person across the counter has to be honest without being unkind. A young woman with a guitar and a line about the provenance she has practiced in the car. The guitar can tell the truth if you know how to listen. A tourist who watched the show and just wants to stand where the camera once did. The counter handles all three with the same mood. Show me what you have. Let us see what it says. Then we will talk. If you stand long enough, you begin to understand why roomers have such a hard time surviving near rooms like this. The shop runs on verification and patience. The two things the internet keeps telling us are optional. The same habits that keep bad deals off the books will keep bad stories off your screen if you let them. It is a simple translation. Documentation is to items what sources are to stories. Provenance is to artifacts what jurisdiction is to law. A second opinion is a healthy practice both for diamonds and for headlines. When you love the process more than the rush, you stop feeding factories that want you to confuse feeling with fact. We can talk about the mansion too, now that the sirens have faded. It is not a museum of crimes. It is a house. It holds the kinds of things a collector accumulates after a lifetime of turning history into livelihood. Books boxed against sun and time. Framed documents that hold signatures like a breath. Cases with small items that were too beautiful or too strange to sell. A few historic firearms displayed properly, because knowing the law is part of loving the object. Guitars on stands because music pays the other bill the soul sends. A kitchen that smells like coffee, oil from dinner, and the cleaner that makes the counter shine because someone there is fussy about clean lines. The shock of that house is that it is unshocking. The life you thought was dramatic is mostly habit and care. If the show is paused, what fills his days? Less hurry, more intention. Projects that do not require a green light from a network. Conversations that are not planned for segments. Travel that has nothing to do with a producer's schedule. Work at the shop because the customers did not vanish when the credits rolled. Small events that gather people without going through a ratings office. It is tempting to treat the pause as a cliff. It is usually a bend. People with a craft keep practicing it because the craft is how they understand the world. Roomers do not grasp this because roomers do not understand practice. They only understand noise. At night, the other room comes alive. The stage lights come up at a club that has been a second home for a long time. The rooms share a quality, shop and stage. Both require you to show up in person and do a thing at a particular hour. Neither responds well to panic or to lies. The guitar has no patience for a rumor, and the engine has none for a hoax. They demand reality, hand and ear and eyes. If you want to defend yourself against the next wave of nonsense, pick up something that weighs 5 pounds and has nothing to do with your phone. Let it ask you to be present. That is a better inoculation than any list of rules. The hoax still costs something even when you beat it. Staff spend time telling people that the account asking for deposits is not real. Fans who fell for a fake feel embarrassed and sometimes angry. An afternoon disappears into cleaning up messes no one had to make. If you want to help, do the 2 small things that matter. Report the fake accounts. Warn your people gently when you see them sharing a lie. You cannot save the whole feed, but you can take some of the fuel away from the worst fires. Now that we have looked at the fake machine and the real rooms, we can answer the title that dragged you here. What did the FBI find inside Rick Harrison's mansion? Nothing. There was no warrant at the door. There were no jackets on the lawn. There were no receipts for seized property. There was no story to tell because the event did not occur. The shocking discovery is not inside a house. It is inside a habit. You discovered that you could prefer proof to panic and be happier for it. Before we close, try this little exercise called the 2 doors. The next time a headline promises a shocking discovery, imagine 2 doors in your mind. Behind the first door is the rush of reacting, the share, the comment, the herd. It feels good for a minute and costs you trust. Behind the second door is the pause, the name, date, place check, the look for paper, the local mirror, the 10-minute wait to see if the thing exists anywhere else in the real world. That door feels dull for a minute and pays you back for years. Pick the second door 3 times in a row and watch how heavy the first door starts to feel. That is called growing out of the hoaxer's business model. If you made it here, you did something rare in the feed. You stayed past the hook to make room for the truth. That is probably why you liked a show about a counter in the first place. Half the pleasure was watching people with experience and patience turn chaos into value. The rest was the recognition that human beings can be kind without pretending and firm without being cruel. That is not a bad way to be an audience. It is also not a bad way to be a person. End on the driveway you were told to imagine as a crime scene. The air is plain. A delivery truck idles and moves on. Somewhere, a neighbor waters a plant against the desert heat. A dog will bark at a jogger in 5 minutes. The door is just a door. Inside, a life goes on with its lists and its small satisfactions. Breakfast dishes, the click of a lock, the relief of a couch that remembers your back. The only sirens that matter belong to fire trucks and ambulances doing real work in real time. The only shocking discoveries worth trusting are the ones that come with names on paper and voices that sign their work. We are done. You know the trick. You know the room. You know the difference. Keep your minutes. Keep your care. Spend both where they build something you can point to when the day is over. If this helped you spot the tricks, subscribe, share with someone who forwards rumors, and comment your best verified tip. Support real rooms, visit real shops, and choose proof over panic every time.